Ladies and gentlemen, we're now about to march ahead because let me tell you something that we have an extremely special guest amidst us this evening. Now, in a complex and dynamic landscape of modern defense, the role of strategic logistics has become increasingly vital. Ensuring that armed forces are always prepared and operating efficiently is not just a matter of planning, but also a critical determinant of the operational success. Kaha jata hai, the only way to tackle spontaneity is by being prepared. Chahe wo chota sa summit ka maidan ho ya bada sa jang ka maidan. How important is preparedness in order to, and how important is efficiency? I think it goes a long, long way. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, we have with us someone who has been an alumnus of the Indian Military Academy. In fact, he's also the recipient of the Uttam Yudh Seva Medal in 2023, the Yudh Seva Medal in 2021, the Sena Medal in 2019, the Vishisht Seva Medal in 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please have a thunderous round of applause, because amidst us is none other than Master General Sustenance, Lieutenant General Amardeep Singh, Aujla. May we please have a standing ovation to welcome you, sir. It means the world that you're here with us this evening. Thank you so much for coming. And if I could humbly invite you on stage to please address the august gathering.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant General Amardeep Singh Aujla, the Master General of Sustenance for the Indian Army. And I'm entrusted with a very small responsibility, and that responsibility is to ensure this massive Indian Army that we have, one of the largest in the world, to keep it, battle-worthy at all times. So that's the singular kind of a responsibility and a mandate that I have on my table. Ladies and gentlemen, before I commence my talk and put across my views and perspectives, I want to make two pitches. The first one is an expression and the second one is a confession. On the expressional front, my gratitude to the organizers for giving me this opportunity of, getting me here to share my thoughts, to share the perspective of the Indian Army related to, strategic logistics in the defense. I think a very, very important charter. And on the confessional front, I must confess that I'm not a logistician. I've put in 37 years of service, and out of that 37 years, 36 years has been on the operational front. I'm a hardcore infantryman, a foot soldier. It's only in the last 1 year that I've sat on this chair. But nonetheless, while I'm still learning the nuances of logistics at the micro and the macro level, I'll share my perspective over the next about 20 minutes and give you a deep insight as to where we are today, what is that we are looking forward in the times to come, and how, I think in a collective kind of a fashion, we can converge and take and make many things happen in the rightful direction. Now, they say that the outcome of the battles are decided by the logisticians well before they have even begun. And there's absolutely no doubt in this particular statement. When we talk about logistics, it is the single most important and the most vital factor in any military campaign. You simply cannot mount an attack or a defense unless you have a sound logistical backup in support. And it refers to all things that are necessary to ensure that the army in field is constantly and, amazingly equipped in terms of, ammunition, in terms of rations, in terms of clothing, in terms of gas, oil, and so forth. And if I have to highlight this particular aspect a little further, it is just an aspect related to as to what is the ratio that goes between the combat and the combat support troops. Again, ladies and gentlemen, in any modern army today, this ratio fluctuates between 1:5 to 1:9. So that's the type of importance, that's the type of sensitivity, that's the significance that we attach to the support mechanism when we talk about the logistics and the military operations. Now, we in the Army, we require, maintainers to look after each and every equipment and store that we have. Whether it is weapon handlers, whether it is refuelers, whether it is drivers, whether it is, medics or the medical people, or it is the supply clerks or people who are involved in, planning on transport for us. So that is the reason why, logistics and the supply chains are constantly and continuously working to ensure that the frontline troops at all levels remain well equipped, well fed, well clothed, and in possession of sufficient kind of ammunition so that whatever mission that they have set out for themselves, they are able to accomplish that. Now, when we talk about the Indian Army per se, we have a certain amount of uniqueness. There's a certain set of peculiarities which, make us an absolutely different kind of an entity. And the challenges also are very, very different. And these are the ones which, define our role, our task, and our identity to a certain extent. And I'll dwell on each of these aspects deliberately. And the first one which comes automatically to mind is the threat matrix or the threat umbrella in which we operate. What are the threats that we, face? You'll be able to, associate things as I go along in successive kind of forms. So when we talk about the threats that we have to engage with or for which we have to remain prepared, you have the conventional threats along the western and the northern borders with countries with whom we share borders. We have these sub-conventional or the hybrid threats related to counterinsurgency and counter-terrorist operations. We have the threats in the physical domain pertaining to law and order. And we have the threats, in situations where we have to operate in out-of-area contingencies, inclusive of our UN responsibilities. So this is the type of threat matrix in which we have to operate and for which we have to remain prepared at all times, 24/7. With the threat and the geography of the country comes the multispectral deployment pattern that we have. We are deployed in the glacier, we are deployed in high altitude areas, we are deployed in mountains, we are deployed in jungles, we are deployed in plains, we are deployed in deserts, we are deployed in riverine terrain, we are deployed in amphibious areas. So you can see the construct which is there in front of us, both in terms of our threats and the deployments. So to cater for this particular aspect is the huge inventory that we have to create or which we have to maintain. Until about a couple of years back, it was 7 lakhs plus. We've consolidated and we've got it down to about 4 lakhs plus, 4.26 to be precise. Still, a lot needs to be done. And the lot can happen provided we converge, provided we have the best practices which come in, which I think each one of you has discussed. Well, they come into play and they get adapted by the service, and that is the Army. So while this is the broad kind of a construct, there are certain challenges also which are there. We have a bloated infantry because we do not want to get into a stock out kind of a situation. The mandate and the responsibility that is there with us does not permit us to get into that kind of a situation. We have, the traditional stocking which takes place at multiple levels. Then we have huge carriage and maintenance costs. And last but not the least, the shelf life management or the turnover management by itself is a task. So as the Master General of Sustenance for the Indian Army, what is the biggest want? What is the biggest concern? What is that I'm looking at? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at, smart and intelligent logistical solutions, which can at all times give me a 100% assurance that I'll be able to maintain credible operational preparedness and readiness for the Indian Army at all times. So that's the bottom line. And that's the structure on which we work day in and day out. So since logistics are an important part and they form part of the success matrix of any military operations. Its planning, its coordination, its execution, assumes great significance. And I'll substantiate by giving you a few examples as to what is this linkage between the military operations and the logistics that the kind of logistics that we require. And the first thing which comes into mind automatically is the supply chain management. Because this is something which ensures that we'll get the resources and the material at the right time, in the right quantity and at the right place. Then comes the flexibility and the mobility, because this is something which gives us agility. This is something which gives us responsiveness. This is something which, helps us out in our rapid deployments and redeployments. This is something which gives us flexibility in terms of commanders to take and adapt to situations on the battlefield as they come about. The next factor is, the logistics becoming a force multiplier. Because not only does it enhance the combat effectiveness, but it also increases our mission success rates. Then you have the sustainability. If we have to, carry on operations for a longer period of time, it is the efficient management of the resources at hand, which most of the time are pretty scarce and may not be forthcoming in the manner that we desire. So efficient resource management is also very, very, important and significant to us. Another factor which comes to mind is the risk mitigation. By anticipating potential challenges, by developing contingency plans, not only do you mitigate this particular aspect, but you also enhance the overall effectiveness of the force by minimizing disruptions. So these are aspects that we are looking at. And today, when we talk about interoperability, when we work in multinational kind of environments, when we work in cross-domain warfare situations, when we work in joint military operations, it is the logistics and the supply chains actually which binds us together. Because standardized procedures, standardized protocols are the ones where the units and the agencies who are working, they are able to integrate seamlessly. So suffice to say that logistics is a fundamental component of the military operations. And ladies and gentlemen, being in the uniform, I also take this opportunity to tell you that when we talk about logistics and the supply chain management, the historical part, they are related with the history in a big way. I think many principles that we have adopted today are basically the outcomes of the great military strategies and the great military campaigns that we've seen for centuries. And if I just take you back in time, in 335 BC is when Alexander started his campaign from Macedonia, came right up till Bias River. For 12 long years, he was on the move. And mind you, his forces, they used to travel 15 to 20 kilometers every day. And the logisticians were the ones who were planning the entire strategy, used to ensure that there were 10 days of supplies maintained at all times. And that's how he could, carry on in such kind of a fashion. Much later, you all would have heard as to how the Chola Empire Navy, in 1025 AD, sailed across from southern India, from Tamil Nadu, went across into Indonesia, that is Sumatra. And the famous Shri Vijay, that capture, that invasion, is still very, I think, fresh in the minds of many people. Everything was possible because there were logisticians who were there in place. There was a strategy which was there. There was supply chain management techniques which were put into practice. And that is how they came out successful. And much later than that, the likes of Muhammad Ghauri's and the Ghaznis, the Mughals, the East India Company. In the last century, you talk about the two world wars, particularly the Second World War. Again an example. In the Second World War, US was fighting battles in 3 different continents, in Africa, in Europe, and fighting in the Far East with Japan. Their entire forces, comprising of 95 divisions, were being supported by sheer logistics. And that is how they were able to overcome or fight in the manner that they were required to, because they had a solid kind of a support mechanism. And you would have heard about, the battles of Stalingrad, the great Normandy landings, Op Barbarossa, the great Vietnam campaign, which went on for 20 years, from 55 to 75. All these are fantastic examples of how the great military planning was supported by logistics and in particular the supply chain management. And when we talk about our own context, from the time that we got independent in 47 to where we are today, whether we've gone in and the wars that we fought in 47, 48, that is in Kashmir, or the 62 operations, 65, 71, the Kargil operations of 99, what happened in Uri in 2016, and closer home in 2020 in eastern Ladakh, where we are currently also engaged in Operation Snow Leopard, that is the Galwan operations. Everything happened because we were able to sustain and put across what was required in terms of men, material, and resources at the rightful time. And that is how it became a huge kind of a deterrence. And that is what is sustaining us at the national and the international level. So this is the kind of importance that we associate when we talk about logistics. And when we talk about the outcomes which have come or which we've drawn out of these logistics, some of the very important ones, the systematic approaches that have come our way, the modern SCM principles or the supply chain management principles, the innovative logistical solutions, the human resource management techniques, and the strategic and the tactical planning, which give us, which helps us out in formulating our short and long-term goals. All these are outcomes of the great military history lessons that we have, gone about. So a lot is associated to the military history when we talk about, and this is what has developed and defined, and this is what has laid the foundation for its adoption and expansion in the civil and the commercial street. And we are proud of that. So where are we today? So if this was the kind of a background, what is that, where are we as far as the Indian Army is concerned in terms of logistics and supply chain management? But I'll take a small little detour and I'll put the end state first. While it is not an end state, because in logistics and I think supply chain management, there's never an end state. We are in a process of evolvement. Everything is progressive. Everything has to keep changing. Everything has to be dynamic. So when we look at as to what is Indian Army looking at when we talk about 10, 15, 20 years from now. So as a visionary kind of a thing, there are 5 aspects which are very, very important to us. And the first one is total asset visibility of our complete inventory. The second aspect is a collaborative kind of an environment between all the stakeholders. The third aspect is having a single source of data between all the involved players. The fourth aspect is that we have improved kind of, forecasting ability for better accuracy, which helps us out in our provisioning and procurement. And the last aspect is to have real-time access to, enterprise-wide information for us to assess our strengths, our weaknesses, and the opportunities. So this is the kind of a vision that we are looking at. So if this is the kind of a vision, where are we today? Again, ladies and gentlemen, the logistical model that is currently in vogue in the defense forces, particularly in the army, it's a multi-tiered, multi-echeloned one. We have a huge inventory, like what I brought out a little earlier. We have the central depots, we have the regional depots, and we have the ordnance units with the formations, our fighting formations. We have our suppliers and manufacturers in terms of the DPSUs and the private industry or the private industrial partners which are there. We have a 3-dimensional kind of a transportation model encompassing air, land, and sea. We have 3 very distinct tiers in terms of our supply chain management. The first tier looks after the fast and the light stores. The second tier looks after movement of heavy stores. And the third tier looks after movement of men, material, men, and certain very peculiar and specialist kind of an equipment. And together, it's a mix and a combination of a push and a pull model that is followed on ground. That is our working methodology. Now, what is the requirement? The requirement for us is to give it an industrial orientation. And that is where, a collaborative kind of an effort and from all the experts, the distinguished, I would say, scholars, the logistician, wizards who are sitting here, this is where we want each one of you to pitch in. We are there to, put across our problem statements, and you are the people who have to guide us. You are the people who have to give your recommendations, your suggestions, and you have to take and possibly modify the logistical model that we have today in place. What are we looking at? We are looking at innovative methods. We are looking at absorption of technology, whether it is AI, whether it is machine learning, whether it is blockchain, whether it is, predictive analysis, whether it is Internet of Things, whether it is digitization or automation, all this encompassing. For us, the need of the hour is to concentrate on the core and outsource the non-core. We have to align at the national level and integrate ourselves with the best policies that the government has enunciated. Whether it's the national logistical policy, or it is the Gati Shakti, or the Bharatmala, or the Sagarmala. And in the future, every infrastructure that we develop has to be aligned and integrated on one kind of a model. Whether it is setting up of, the central warehouses, setting up or constructing logistical parks, or, certain container depots which may come about. But we also have to get dovetailed into this kind of a practice. So for this, while we have set a vision and where we are today, to achieve what we have set out for, there are certain key aspects that we've set for ourselves in terms of our strategic planning. And there are three of them. The first one is user satisfaction. User satisfaction for the forces has to be 200%. I won't even peg it at 100%. The second is to define our goals, which have to be absolutely clear. And when we talk about the goals, it is in terms of the short, medium, and the long term. And within that are the ways and means and the processes as to how we are going to achieve it. What is the end result that I'm looking at? The end result that I'm looking at is to have a sustainable, efficient, effective, and a very resilient kind of a model in the support role. And the third aspect of a strategic planning is to promote indigenization, Atmanirbharta, is to enhance our capacities in terms of search capabilities. Why should I stock so much? Why should I maintain such a huge inventory? If there is a search capability of a defense industry in place, then I can, willfully bank on all these capacities and capabilities to be holding good for me in times to when they're actually required. So that is how we look at the future. And that is how we have formulated, while there's a uniqueness in scope and criticality for us in terms of our certain peculiarities, but then we have devised our strategy in terms of the supply chain management. And it stands on certain pillars. And these pillars are the procurement and the inventory management methodologies which are there in place. We are talking about the transportation and the distribution techniques. We're talking about and looking forward to the supply chain management techniques. And within these techniques, just for the information of the entire house, we've got our own ERPs on which we are working. We've got the S/4HANA, which is looking after the entire inventory and is giving us absolute kind of a visibility. And similarly, we have localized kind of our own softwares which are currently in place. Because of certain security reasons, you can't put them out in the open domain. But we are ready to encompass and we are ready to align them in due course of time with the other standardized kind of ERPs which are currently available. So data analysis, automation of inventory, like I said before, asset visibility, this is the order of the day. And apart from that, you have the risk mitigation and the resilience. You have the supportive and the ethical part, which also has to be dovetailed. And then the most important part, which I shared with you, is the collaboration and the cooperation that we, solicit from each one of you. And last but not the least is the human resource management in terms of training, in terms of developing our leadership and carrying out our workforce planning. So these are certain structures on which our supply chain management strategy today rests. But ladies and gentlemen, what is more important? The biggest challenge for us is to, maintain this strategic approach where we leverage technology, where we focus on effectiveness and resilience, and always remain on that, improvement kind of a mode. Aim is to adapt the best which is available in the environment. Aim is to, touch base and align and integrate with the wonderful logistical practices and supply chain management techniques which are currently in vogue. While they may be, we know that because of our peculiarities, they have to be structured and tailor-made to suit our requirements, but I think that's highly possible. And we have to touch base and ensure that the best of technologies that are currently available in the environment they also become part of the military logistics, of the military supply chain management. And these are, the digital transformation. It is AI and machine learning. It is the blockchain techniques. It is automation and robotics. It is Internet of Things. It is, the advanced manufacturing techniques. It is integration of your logistical platforms. It is sustainable and green logistics. It is, enhanced cybersecurity. It is to have a very agile and a resilient kind of a supply chain mechanism in place. And of course, nothing to beat the collaboration through which we have to achieve that. So if this be the broader kind of a construct, what is that, I am recommending? What I am recommending is basically not a classical kind of a recommendation, but it is something which is doable, some things on which we are currently already on the work, but where we would be requiring your support. And those are in terms of, the best practices that we have to see for ourselves. It is collaborative forecasting and planning. It is ramping and building up our defense or domestic production capacities. It is to encourage the MSMEs because they are the ecosystem of the defense industry, the ecosystem of our logistics and the supply chain management. We have to simplify our own procurement and the acquisition processes. We have to set, standard norms. So these are certain things that we are looking at, and in the future, once the theaterization comes into play, where all the three services get integrated, we will definitely have an integrated logistical setup. And that is where the supply chain management and the logistics, will go into a different kind of a league. And that is where the indulgence of each one of you will come into play in a much, much larger kind of a manner. Ladies and gentlemen, in the end, just to cap things, I must tell you that it is not the armies who go to war, it is the nations who go to war. And when that happens, it is the whole of the nation approach that comes to bear and comes to deliver. Today, when we talk about logistics and the supply chain management, it is transforming so rapidly and radically that terms like velocity management, mass customization, vendor-controlled inventory, outsourcing, complete or total asset visibility, they are no longer alien to our ears because they have actually shown their colors in the rightful manner. These are the best practices and the best techniques that we have to align to. So time is now ripe. I'm sure it is ripe for each one of you, but for us as an organization, as a service headquarters, it is definitely, we are at the cusp to adopt and to integrate with these best practices. What is required is a support from each one of you. And while I end my talk here, but it's just the end of the talk, I think, but it's a beginning of a different era of partnership. It's a beginning of a different era of hand-holding, and it's an era of, of a different kind, where collectively, I think we have to come together for the national cause, and of course, for each of the organizations that we represent. I am my headquarters is there in Sena Bhavan. Very soon we'll be coming out with a paper. We'll be giving out our problem statements related to both these aspects, logistics and the supply chain management. You people are most welcome to come forward. And I think I'm very sure that together we can, together we should, and together we will. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you indeed very much, sir, for filling us with a deep sense of inspiration and a deep sense of commitment. And it is absolutely enlightening to also see how the forces approach the scenarios and the verticals head on. And thank you for sharing across all the initiatives, all the strategies. But that being said, if I could humbly request for your presence on the stage for just a couple of minutes, sir. If I could please invite you back on stage for just maybe a minute. As I'd now like to please invite Mr. Pradeep Banerjee, former Executive Director, Hindustan Unilever, Operating Partner, Advent International, Senior Advisor, BCG, also our jury member for the awards evening. I request Mr. Pradeep Banerjee to please present a token of gratitude to Lieutenant General Amardeep Singh Aujla for his valuable and his powerful presence with us this evening. I think that calls for another huge round of applause, everyone.